This is the 24th of these awards, but this is the first year in which there is a very special award or a recognition. And I'm going to take a few minutes of your time to tell you a story and give you a background to the recipients of this rather special award. Now, like Britain, Australia took its lead in the early days of rock and roll from the US. Although we had musicians of flair and imagination who could set alight any dance floor and singers of howling intensity who could let rip with the best of them, we took our songs and thus our musical direction from abroad. Australian pop and rock was mostly derivative. Our artists trawled through boxes of sample singles in local record company offices to find foreign songs they could cover before the international versions had a chance to gain a foothold in this market. Certainly there were songs like The Wild One, otherwise known as Real Wild Child, penned by Johnny O'Keefe and his DJs, and recorded by everyone from Jerry Lee Lewis to Iggy Pop. But they were very much exceptions rather than the rule. Now, it's always the visionaries who, to paraphrase George Bernard Shaw, rather than looking at things as they are and asking why, look at things as they could be and say, why not? One of those visionaries was Ted Albert, the fourth head of the local publishing house J. Albert & Son, who had a passionate interest in audio technology and in the emerging beat boom of the early 60s. Now, I recently cited a document that in many ways marked the beginning of serious Australian rock songwriting. It was on the Monday morning after the weekend departure from Sydney to New Zealand of the Beatles in June 1964 that Ted dictated a letter to his company's attorney and general representative in the US, a man called Julian T. Aberles. The Fab Four had left the city reeling after 6 concerts at Sydney Stadium, and the electricity was still very much in the air. He said, with great prescience, I should say, he said, "It seems that the time is at hand for a real boom in local compositions and recordings, and we have therefore entered this field with much more drive than ever before. We are endeavouring to secure contracts with top local artists for exclusive publishing rights on their original compositions, together with recording rights." Well, secure he did. First of all, snapping up a man by the name of Tony Barber from the ranks of Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs, who came up with hits like Blue Day, That I Love, Don't You Know, and Someday. But his real prize, which he knew from the moment they struck up and played their original songs in the old 2UW Theatre, was the Easy Beats. After them, Australian rock would never be the same again. Indeed. Now, they did some Rolling Stones songs, Ted once told me, about that fateful day. They were fun, but when they played Say That You're Mine, I almost broke my neck getting a contract drawn up. Now, that song, which didn't end up becoming a single, happened to be the first Vandering Young collaboration. But the songs that would make the Easy Beats an astonishing national sensation, with 8 top 5 hits in just 18 months, were written by rhythm guitarist George Young with vocalist Stevie Wright. They were amazingly prolific young writers, Stevie having a knack for knocking out quick, succinct rock lyrics, and George with his exceptional capacity for melody and intense musical structures. Even before the first Albert session, they had knocked out more than 20 complete songs on an old piano at the Young family's Burwood residence. Harry at this point was barely speaking English. The bluesy For My Woman made a respectable showing early in 1965, but it was the chirpy, cocky and quite irresistible #1, She's So Fine, that marked the beginning of the ferocious phenomenon of Easy Fever. Few incidents of Beatlemania or Rolling Stone mania ever surpassed the manic peak of Easy Fever. Airports, TV stations, theatres and hire cars were reduced to rubble. Fans were hospitalised and general mayhem reigned wherever they turned up. With their vital, urgent sound, the Easy Beats gave Australian music a new identity and confidence. They were not only refreshingly original, but blessed with a rare charisma. They radiated an aura of raw, rebellious excitement that proved irresistible to an isolated generation intoxicated by the simple fact of its own youth. The hits couldn't be contained. Wedding Ring, Sad and Lonely and Blue, then 3 number ones in a row. Women, within my book on the flip side, Come and See Her, and the Easy Fever EP with Too Much and I'll Make You Happy. And then a top 5 with the musically innovative Sorry. They even found time, George and Stevie, to knock out the number 1 Step Back for Johnny Young and Company. When the Easy Beats started writing massive hits, it turned the industry around. Suddenly, bands like the Twilights, the Loved Ones, the Masters Apprentices and the Group were penning their own hits. Instead of resorting to convenient covers, the stakes had been raised and Oz rock would never look back. By the time the Easy Beats were lodged, By the time the Easy Beats were lodged in London at the end of 1966, the creative balance was shifting. Harry's English was far stronger, and George Young felt that he'd reached a stage as a writer where he needed to work with another musician. And work he did. The first Vanda and Young collaboration to emerge publicly was the song that still stands as the team's most admired, acclaimed and recorded piece. It was real working class rock and roll, once said Harry with some pride. Being hostile, boys, that's what you dream about all week. Friday. Friday on My Mind, recorded with Kinks and Who producer Shel Talmy, was not just the Easy's 5th Australian number 1, it reached number 6 on the UK charts in October 66, and by March the following year it was in the US top 20. Since then it has been widely covered with versions by David Bowie, Peter Frampton, Gary Moore and even the James Last Orchestra. In 2001, it was decreed by an APRA poll to be the greatest Australian song of the previous 75 years. After Friday on My Mind, Vanda and Young songs flowed thick and fast. Hello, How Are You, Good Times, Bring a Little Lovin', The Music Goes Round My Head, St Louis, Falling in Love Again, My Old Man's a Groovy Old Man, Can't Wait for September, Superman and Pasadena, amongst many others. After 8 years of making music in London, Vanda and Young came home in 1973 to put to use all they had learned. With the support of the Albert organisation, who provided them with state-of-the-art studio in which to base themselves, they set about blitzkrieging Australian popular music in a manner that had not been seen since the heyday of the Easy Beats. Almost overnight, they controlled pop radio with their songwriting efforts for old comrade Stevie Wright and for John Paul Young, William Shakespeare, Ray Burgess and their own alter ego of Flash in the Pan. The hits just tumbled. Evie, the only 11-minute plus song to ever get to number 1 anywhere in the world. Guitar Band, Hard Road, Can't Stop Myself from Loving You, My Little Angel, Love Fever, Yesterday Was Just the Beginning, Yesterday's Hero, I Hate the Music, The Love Game, Lovers in the Air, Standing in the Rain, Hasten Peter, Down Among the Dead Men. And it wasn't just in Australia. All around the world their songs were being covered. Wright and Young songs were recorded by the 3 O'Clock, Divinals, the Sports, the Plimsolls. Vanda and Young songs by Rod Stewart, the Bay City Rollers, Grace Jones, Susie Quattro, Cheetah, Little River Band, In Excess and Jimmy Barnes, The Saints and so many others. Flash in the Pan had a UK top 10 hit in the 80s with Waiting for a Train, and in the 90s Mark Williams took Harry and George's Show No Mercy into the top 10 here. Now, in case you haven't been paying attention, that smash hits in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s and the 90s for combinations of Wright, Vanda and Young. We've had some fabulous songwriters emerge. Yeah, indeed. We've had some fabulous songwriters emerge from this country, but none whose collective achievements can match those of these 3 immigrant hostile heroes who rose above their surroundings and gave Australia a credible rock industry at the same time. Those of you who caught the recent Long Way to the Top concert tour will recall clearly how there was not a dry eye in the house when Stevie Wright rendered Evie parts 1, 2 and 3 with all its sweeping grandeur. He, like his partners George Young and Harry Vanda, have given us some of the choicest moments of our memory, and here on the screen are some of them.
young artists left Australia to try their luck on the London sea. In the hectic weeks before they left, they put together a special show for you.
Snowy!